Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Before he was a big blue state governor, he was a big blue city mayor. Talk about Gavin Newsom. Newsom, or Patrick Bateman, as I call him, was the mayor of San Francisco.
Oh, that's right. It was, yeah.
Oh.
And isn't his aunt or cousin Nancy Pelosi?
American Psycho, mayor of San Francisco. In 2008, he announced the following.
Oh, no.
We believe fundamentally that food solves hunger, that shelters solve sleep, and that housing solves homelessness. And if we're going to solve the problem of those that are out on the streets that we define as homeless, we better solve the housing problem if we're going to have an impact. And that's why we established this framework, what we call a 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness in San Francisco.
Oh, how's that working out?
Yeah, anybody know how that turned out, that 10-year plan that was launched in 2008 to end homelessness in San Francisco? Has anybody checked in on San Francisco lately? It's the same story in all these big cities and blue states with the same type of politicians.
And people don't realize we have 60,000 plus homeless in Chicago.
Everything's a 5 and 10-year plan that's, in the billions of dollars. And it's always about pouring more money into either nonprofit infrastructure to pay off people to keep up the appearances that there's some movement afoot to make the community safer, to provide for those who are disadvantaged. And what do you see? An increase in dependency and detritus. That's what it actually produces. And so we know that all too well in Chicago. But we delude ourselves with these phony debates about like the one we talked about the other day per Rafael Mangual's piece about the myth of nonviolent crime. When you look at these quote-unquote nonviolent crimes, you see a lot of crimes that are backed up by the possibility of violence, and sometimes they are, as Rafael recounted in his piece. He joins us now, Rafael Mangual, Senior Fellow, Head of Research for the Manhattan Institute's Policing and Public Safety Initiative, author of Criminal Injustice, What the Push for Mass Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong, and Who It Hurts the Most. Rafael, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back.
Nonviolent crime, if you just let people take something from the shelves and then you call police after the fact rather than attempting to stop them or defending yourself or rendering aid to somebody else who's being attacked, then or being, I shouldn't say attack because that's not nonviolent, but somebody else who's otherwise suffering a burglary or a car being stolen or whatever, then we can really reduce crime because then those people that are stealing, wouldn't be compelled to hurt people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the giant misunderstanding in the way that, progressives in particular frame the debate about violence and violent crime is that they misunderstand the deeply antisocial nature of criminals in general, the sort of people who will steal your catalytic converter or, take a beer off the shelf in your bodega or, break into your garage and take your belongings. I mean, these are individuals who have no regard for society's rules. So the idea that, we are sort of imputing to them some deep respect for, a line between violence and nonviolence is kind of silly. And we see that more and more in these cases in which individuals do attempt to intervene and stop individuals from running roughshod over them, right? I mean, there was a video that went viral on social media about a year ago where someone had been awoken in the middle of the night to catalytic converter thieves stealing their car parts in their own driveway. The guy opens the window to yell down, and the dude threatens him with violence and displays a firearm. This is the kind of thing that people don't realize. Yes, it's a nonviolent crime up until the point in which you say no, then it becomes a violent crime, right? And we unfortunately just saw another example of that in San Francisco.
Well, is this ever going to end, or is this just our new reality? We have to live like this because people. I mean, I was telling Dan off air, somebody in our neighborhood was robbed at gunpoint Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. They put a gun to her head. Two black guys said, "Give us your money," and she started crying. They're like, "Don't cry," and she said that she felt that they meant it as, "We don't have time for this. Give us your money, and we're going to get out of here."
Yeah, yeah, and the scary thing is, and the reason that people in that situation should comply is that if you don't, if you hesitate, or if what you give isn't satisfactory, there is a real risk that those individuals will hurt you, right? I mean, I watched a video of a robbery on the west side of Chicago not too long ago, again, where an individual, broad daylight, a car pulled up to an individual that was walking, three guys got out, one had a gun. They take everything, they actually get his belongings, and then they pistol whip him and beat him for no reason, right? It was just fun for them. These individuals, again, the sort of people who violate social norms at that level, with that level of ease, these are people who have no regard for society's rules, all of society's rules, right? These are not individuals who say, well, I'm just a nonviolent offender, right? I'm not going to carry out this implicit threat if you try and stop me. And what we see over and over and over again is that even really, really minor offenses, things like, telling somebody to put their cigarette out when they light up on a subway car, can end up with real violence. Why? Because those individuals are essentially daring you, right? When someone gets on the CTA and starts blasting their radio with, explicit rap lyrics, they are daring people on the car to tell them to stop. There is an underlying threat of violence there. And when no one says anything, they're sort of getting off on that, right? And we see all too often when people do intervene and do say something, that individual will then, stand up and, far too often actually become very, very violent.
Well, and you have this. I mean, you understand this as well as anybody, but just another anecdote to share for illustrative purposes. 11-time convicted felon accused of burglarizing 3 Chicago restaurants cut a deal with prosecutors that reduced all 3 burglary charges to criminal damage to property. So now he's a 14-time convicted felon. And he walked the same day as this deal was cut. He got credit for time served, awaiting the adjudication of his case. But it didn't used to be this way. For example, in 2011, one of the other more than dozen times he was convicted of a felony, he was convicted of burglarizing a restaurant on the north side. He got 14 years because that had been a buildup of felony robbery and burglary after felony robbery and burglary. And so finally a judge.
And you're gonna have to help me with my math, because 2011 and 14 years.
Yeah, well, so he got out in 2018 after serving half the time, and then he burglarized Little India restaurant on the 1100 block of West Bryn Mawr, and so on and so forth. This is he's 50 years old, so he's been doing this for the better part of his adulthood, and but at one point there was a real sentencing for burglary. Now they're not even bothering with that. They're not even bothering to give him 14 years, so maybe he serves 7. They're just time served, and this is repeated. So I mean, I guess the message to Chicago restaurants is, you're on notice. Larry Banks, habitual burglar, is on the loose again.
Yeah, I mean, really, Chicago residents and residents all over the country are being put in a really difficult place, because the message is exactly that, right? We, the state, are not going to intervene and do what's necessary to keep you all protected from the inevitable violence and violations of your property that you are facing in higher and higher numbers. And, in other periods of history, what that does is that encourages vigilanteism, right? It encourages people to take justice into their own hands, to harden their own securities, to acquire firearms, and to prepare to meet those kinds of threats with their own violence. And that's not a great world to live in. It's not one I want to live in. But on top of that,
Well, and
now,
just if I could stop you there too, boy, that the vigilanteism. I mean, it calls to mind this discussion we had several weeks ago, and we'll have again when his trial comes up about Daniel Penny and what he and others
exactly
did
right.
on that New York City subway. And now think of what he did and the others on that car did in the context of this video that's gone viral of an older woman having her cane taken from some deranged homeless it seems like a homeless person who then strikes her 50, 60 times with her own cane before relenting. This is all captured on video.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is exactly was going to be my very next point, right? At the same time that the state is sending the message that they are not going to play their role in keeping the public safe, which leaves that responsibility to the public, they are also sending the message that they will absolutely intervene if the public decides to get involved and it doesn't look good on camera, right?
But it's
And so this is
right.
the catch-22.
And also, like, getting involved. I mean, no one's reporting on that cane attack except Fox News. But if it was
New
a
York
white guy
Post.
with a MAGA hat on, oh my God, everybody would be all over it.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the racial dynamics of how these cases are discussed. But again, the public sees this and understands this, and I think the frustrations are certainly growing under the surface. The question is at what point, do voters really stand up and express their outrage at the ballot box? Because that's what's going to need to happen in order for this to change, right? I mean, the injustices that we see carry a lot of momentum and will continue to if we don't do anything.
Our friends over at WirePoints, wirepoints.org, which covers this and other Illinois policy-related issues. We talked to them yesterday, too. They put together this report, I mean, just for your own edification. Reported crimes in 2022 in Chicago. Murder, criminal sexual assault, robbery, aggravated battery, burglary, theft of more than $500, and motor vehicle theft. There were more than 68,000 of those crimes in aggregate. There were just over 3,200 arrests. That's an arrest rate of 5% for pretty serious crimes. Maybe some people say theft over 500 isn't, but you just explain why it is. A 5% arrest rate for the aggregate number of crimes in those categories. So what is what are the police supposed to do if you don't have civilian if you're not backed by the civilian authorities, if you're not working well with your local prosecutor? What are residents supposed to do if none of that's happening and you're just sort of a bystander seeing this all play out? I mean, I guess you say you either vote at the ballot box or you vote with your feet because it's not going to get better.
Right. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. I mean, the numbers in terms of who is leaving cities like Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York for places like Dallas, Texas, and Austin, Texas, and Miami, Florida, right? I mean, those numbers are growing and growing. I think they're going to continue to. But again, it's only a partial solution. It's a partial solution in that it's only a solution available to those with the means to actually flee. A lot of Chicago residents, a lot of New York residents, a lot of LA residents, and San Francisco residents, et cetera, don't have that luxury. They don't have the resources to get up and leave. And they deserve justice. They deserve to be able to stay in the city that they were born in, the only place that they know, and live a safe and secure life.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what really gets my goat about just the indifference that is illustrated through the way that people like Kim Foxx approach what is a disastrous policy problem.
Well,
they understand their role in it.
Yeah. Although the additional frustration is, we're on their side. The people you're talking about deserve equal protection before the law. We're on their side, and they're not on their side. We have to get them on their own side because they're not on it. Because those are many of the people that are voting for the Kim Foxes and the BLM Brandons and of the world, too. So that's the exasperation. Rafael Mangual, Senior Fellow, Head of Research for the Manhattan Institute's Policing and Public Safety Initiative, author of Criminal Injustice, What the Push for Mass Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong, and Who It Hurts Most. Rafael, thanks for joining us as always.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Have you been struggling to find an easy, safe, and secure